women that allows for the worst of crimes to go without punishment and seemingly no remedy to cure it. It prevails because we are unwilling to address the root causes of societal issues and unresponsive systems. A sluggish and ineffective state perpetuates and undermines the aims of women empowerment and advancement. Women leaders in this house must lead the way to transform the public service. There has never been a greater need than there is today for strong moral leadership in the vacuum that exists. Chairperson, it must be our purpose.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sukers. The monitor on your left-hand side, once it turns red, it says something else.
Thank you.
Just a reminder.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We proceed and call on the Honorable, the General Holomiso.
Mhlali ngaphambili namalungu abebekileyo alendlu yalowiso mthetho. Bomama boMzantsi Afrika namantokazi masithethe inyani apha. Ubutyebi belo Mzantsi Afrika namathuba engqesho kwakunye nawo ba umuntu avula ibusiness athande ukuba only again afumane ukhuselo umbutho othile uba ngaba ulolungu apho abantu abatholile. Even nalento extended public works le kuthiwa ngocambalala into ebuhlungu fumana sibaphaya xa uqesha abantu kuthiwe umuntu makaze nekhadi lombutho othile kanti le nkululeko yaye yobani xa ngaba kunodeske kudiscriminate against nabantu abaphuwa abangenanto atyhuwisha imini yonke pha ekugqibeleni kuthiwa hayi asiqeshwanga thina because kuthiwa asikho kulo mbutho uthile. We need to depoliticize le ndaba yokuthi abantu abangomama amathuba abo angayenjani na ukuze nabo baxhamle ebutyebini belizwe. Iyafana nengqesho whether uthetha ngee-DGs uthetha ngee-chief directors abo bantu abo badlula phi bawudlula kwi-deployment policy yombutho olawulayo. Uba ngaba ubhilonge kulo mbutho masingaxokisa abantu apha. Idlule ndiye kulo mcimbi woba wamadoda abulala omama. I think le constitution yethu sinayo eMzantsi Afrika le ethi thetha nge-right to life make siyifundisise siyitolike kakuhle. Yena lothi athathe ubomi bomnye umuntu ithini i-constitution imkhusela njani lo uthathe ubomi. Makixoxe le nto otherwise izasitya sonke le nto izasibulala sonke lo mcimbi. Aba bathetha ngomama uCharlotte Maxeke bantu bakuthi niphethe ngoku siyavuma yenzani nje i-reference be-brief xa nithetha nabantu base-South Africa but sixeleleni uba kwenzeka ntoni ngoku nakwenzani kusasa because uCharlotte Maxeke nomama uSisulu obviously ngeke bayinyamezele le into yoba kutyiwe imali zesizwe ebezifana uba zincedisa abantu. Sanuzosidlala ngabantu base-South Africa. It's enough ne-propaganda yenu. Sifuna iprogram ezawunceda abantu abangomama ne-professional, young professionals ezithiwa noba ufuna uya-aplya ufuna umsebenzi ufuna itenda kuthiwe hayi awubhilonga kule awukho sebranchini awukho kumbutho othile mayiphele le nto otherwise bawuliwa.
Siyathokoza the general. Thank you. Anginalo igama ka-ATM ukhona ozokhuluma. Okay, we proceed. Honorable August from Good.
Honorable Chair, at the last parliamentary sitting dated 28 August 2020, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces called for an urgent program of action from three arms of state to bring an end to gender-based violence and femicide in our country. Soon will be the end of Women's Month, and November will signal 16 days of activism against women and child abuse. If we are to be honest, nothing has changed. In fact, this would have progressively gotten worse. We have witnessed the increase in crimes against women and children in our society, but more so in our places of learning, unemployment, and institutions where these victims are deemed to be safe. Failing to protect women and children has long-lasting consequences for their growth and ability to pursue a prosperous existence in society. If we are to address the generational equality, we must address the cause of these offenses. It is for this reason that Good endorses and believes in the basic income grant so that we can move away from the scourge and assist our families to uplift themselves. Chair, taking this into consideration, South Africans are sick and tired of killing and brutal dismemberment of women and girls in this country. Wearing black at the unnecessary loss of life is not enough. We need calculated, focused, and results-driven interventions. It is therefore that I call for an amendment to the Criminal Law Amendment Act 105 of 1997 on minimum sentence legislation and an amendment to Schedule 2, Part 1, in that we must add femicide as a compulsory life sentence crime. The status quo and the current punishment is not a deterrent. There is no regard for human life. There is no regard for the women who gave life. Tata Madiba said, freedom cannot be achieved unless the women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. Women remain enslaved to this system of patriarchy and violence. No bail for these suspects, these culprits needs to be evicted from our society. May these fallen angels rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable August. Mhlonishwa Sibisi.
Chairperson, can I take this? He's having some difficulty with technology.
Proceed, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Allow me to start off by paying tribute to Babita Deokaran, gunned down mercilessly by all male assassins while fighting corruption in a male-dominated industry, a corruption industry. Honorable Chairperson, we have NGOs in this country, NPOs, CPFs, neighborhood watches, law enforcement that includes Metro Police, SAPS, security industry, tons of legislation, and we need no more. Billions of rands are spent annually, but 112 women are still raped daily. 42 of them raped by those that they are known to. Now, year in and year out, Chairperson, we make this call for women to be protected, recognized, respected, and treated equally. I don't think it is time for more legislation. I think it calls for societal change. There must be something wrong, and we need to get to the root causes of what is going on. 13% of women in this country, only 13%, a meager 13% hold executive positions. If you take the Western Cape, for example, they make up more than the colored community, makes up more than 52, 53% of the population, but only 8% of them hold managerial positions. Let's look at the issue of women with disability. Let's start from this house. How many women with physically challenged women do you have in the 400 number of members in the National Assembly for start? Now, when a woman is raped or murdered, we find that this thing becomes politicized. In front of the court, people got these placards and things. But what have we done, Chairperson, to protect this woman, to prevent them from being raped and to prevent them from being murdered? Very little or nothing is being done in terms of it. Let me pay tribute to people like, Mama Winnie Mandela, the role that she played even in the release of Madiba. Let me pay tribute to Zanele Magwaza and Sibi. What a fantastic woman. And look at how she selflessly served the interest of the women and children in the area where she'd been a mayor for over 14 years. So for women to take their rightful place in society, we need to start at home. How many men in their own homes recognize women equally and respect them? Where do we get this that men, believe that they are superior to women? Every woman out there is somebody's child, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. When can we understand that? Now, I also want to say that as parents, we need to take responsibilities if we want to create a better society of people in the future. And that is where our problem is. We need to get to the root causes of what is happening in the country currently. Why do women continue to earn less than their male counterpart? Okay. In other words, it's another form of apartheid. Before, whites would earn more than in the non-whites. Now it means that women are earning less.
Honorable Sheikh Imam, your time is up.
Thank you.
I know it's been a long time since these sittings have been taking place. Let's please go back and plan accordingly with our allocated time. Rempiti?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In the month of April, my colleagues and I, Honorable Sharif and Honorable Ngobo, traveled across the country visiting Tutuzela care centers, meeting the frontline workers who deal directly with gender-based violence each and every day. The social workers, the counselors, the nurses, the psychologists, and the volunteers. Honorable Speaker, it was extremely difficult to hear the stories of fatigue, burnout, and worry that many felt. These are the people who have to contend with what to do if the police don't bring rape kits on time. These are the people who have to contend with having no vehicles to make it to the most remote parts of our country to get to victims. These are the people who have to contend with the constant rhetoric, the pontification that happens in this house, the politicization of gender-based violence that happens consistently, and the continued pretentiousness and the promises that are made at this podium every year. They asked us to deliver a message that instead of speeches of how we sympathize, instead of politicizing this crisis each and every year, they asked us to tell this house to be bold in our action, be bold for the victims, be bold for all those we've lost. The point is, it is about the people in charge, the people who decide what the priorities become, the people who control the resources, and many of those people are in this house. Our country is currently gripped by the scourge of gender-based violence. One cannot try to analyze this particular violence without looking at the root causes. Gender-based violence is an establishment that strives in an environment of no accountability, no justice, no service delivery, entrenched patronage, and a completely lack of will. Today, many women are watching this debate from home, school, the workplace. I'm worried because I'm not sure whether this government will change anything. It didn't last year, and it didn't the year before that. The government knows what it needs to do. They've heard it time and time again every year in this very house. They've heard it from NGOs, they've heard it from women, they've heard it from many people in this country, but nothing has changed. But what we can change is what we do as men. Not by only caring deeply about these issues, because it is not enough. We need to have more guts to challenge each other, to disrupt each other, and begin to change the level of tragedy in our society. This is one of the ways we stop dominant systems from maintaining themselves, to stop the trajectory of going unexamined about issues that are about us. Now more than ever, we need to stand our ground and fight for the future of South Africa. Because it is clear if we lose the fight against gender-based violence, we lose the future of South Africa. So we have to do it. Be bold for all the women we've lost, for the men and women who never had the opportunity to share their stories, for our parents who grew up in spite of all these things, for them who knew that they had to laugh and dance despite the fact that they were silenced, that their abuse was silenced, for those who have lost hope, for the parents who have lost their daughters, for the children who have lost their mothers. We have to be bold and stop gender-based violence in this country. I thank you.
Ra leboga, Ntate Mphete. Re letsie. Re tsie ntate.
House Chairperson and fellow South Africans. The DAF, as we have heard, the EFF, the Freedom Front Plus, ACDP, surprisingly today, once again misses the point by politicizing a very serious and sensitive pandemic by continues to claim lives and dignity for women and children. Shame on you. As we close off Women's Month, I wish to take a moment to reflect on Women's Charter of 1954, which was adopted at the founding conference of the Federation of South African Women, the Women of South Africa, from all walks of life, boldly declared, open quote, we resolve to struggle for the removal of laws and customs that deny African women the right to own, to inherit, alienate poverty. We resolve to work for a change in the laws of marriage, such as are found amongst our African, Malay, and Indian people, which have the effect of placing wives in the position of legal subjection to husbands and giving husbands the power to dispose of wives' property and earnings and dictate to them in all matters affecting them and their children. We recognize that the women are treated as minors by these marriage and property laws because of ancient and revered traditions and customs which had their own origin in the antiquity of the people and no doubt serve the purpose of great value in bygone time, close quote. Throughout history, women have been marginalized, regarded as the weaker gender, and incapable of fulfilling the duties which were traditionally considered as being for men. History teaches us that women in most parts of the world, including South Africa, were considered perpetual minors without rights to property, to inherit, to vote, to hold legal power, and to hold certain occupations. Married women were legally dead in the eyes of the law. History teaches us that women were relegated to the lower ranks of society. Throughout all of this, history also teaches us that the bodies of women have been considered and treated as objects. The war against women's bodies continues even today. Patriarchy remains deeply entrenched within the fabric of our society and continues to serve as a catalyst to breed and legitimize most violations and discriminations against women. It is therefore imperative that we challenge and dismantle patriarchal attitudes. The fight against patriarchy is not just a woman's struggle. It is my struggle, it is your struggle, it's everybody's struggle. While there has been great progress in the emancipation of women in South Africa through legislative and other means since the advent of democracy, women remain disproportionately represented amongst the country's poorest. The gender gap continues to persist in economic, social, and political spheres. Economic empowerment remains the most important contributing factor to achieving gender equality. Unleashing the entrepreneurial potential of women, which drives growth through innovation, education, training, and job creation, continue to be some of the most effective ways to ensure lasting empowerment. The economic empowerment of women is a prerequisite for reducing poverty in our country and dismantling patriarchy. It is our collective responsibility to change the social construct of patriarchy. Chairperson, the 54th National Congress of the ANC further resolved inter alia that the full might of the criminal justice system, including the denial of bail and sentence regime, should be utilized in combating of violence against women and children, particularly in relation to the domestic violence and sexual offenses. The ANC in its 2019 election manifesto committed itself to eradicating gender-based violence. Following the presidential summit in 2020, 3 bills, which are commonly known as the 3 GBV bills, were tabled before the Portfolio Committee of Justice and Correctional Services, and the public was invited to make submissions. These bills were passed in this House this year, and they are now referred to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. These 3 bills, just to refresh your memories, They are the Criminal and Related Matters Bill, which seeks to, amongst others, introduce stricter bail and sentencing provision, alive to the fact that a child witness must be protected from undue mental stress or suffering while giving evidence. The bill seeks to provide the appointment of intermediaries and regulate the giving of evidence through intermediaries in proceedings other than criminal offenses. The Domestic Violence Amendment Bill is the second one that seeks to address the gaps and anomalies which have manifested themselves since the Domestic Violence Act came into operation in 1999. The Domestic Violence Act provides women with the highest form of protection from domestic violence, placing responsibility squarely on the organs of state, particularly SAPS, to ensure that survivors of domestic violence are able to apply for protection order, which can now be obtained electronically because we're in the era of 4IR. The criminal law, the last one, Amendment Bill, seeks to extend the protection afforded to victims of gender-based violence and to introduce a new offense of sexual intimidation and to extend the ambit of offense of consent. The bill seeks to further regulate the inclusion of particulars of persons in the National Register for Sex Offenders and propose, amongst others, to expand the register scope to include details of all sex offenders and not only offenders against children and persons who are mentally disabled. It increases the period for which a sex offender's particulars must remain on the register and further regulate the reporting duty of persons who are aware that sexual offenses have been committed against persons who are vulnerable, children in particular. House Chair, in his Women's Day 2021 address, the real Commander-in-Chief, President Matamela, outlined that as part of the work to provide justice and support survivors of gender-based violence, 3,500 family violence, child protection, and sexual offenses investigating officers have received specialized training to do their work. He also indicated that 12 public buildings have been renovated and are repurposed to be used as shelters. And work has been done to ensure that all police stations in our country have sexual assault evidence kit. It should be noted that 97 courts are also ready for designation as sexual offenses court. However, consultation is still underway with the Chief Justice on that one. The Sexual Offences Court offer a sequential and coordinated flow of victim-centric support services, which include information, private waiting room, court preparation, pre-trial emotion containment, private testifying, intermediaries, post-trial emotional containment, to name a few. We also want to employ on the victims of GBVF not to withdraw cases against perpetrators, as this makes us look bad, by supporting them from the beginning. The NPA, in collaboration with the Department of Health, has established Tutuzela as we have, and we know their issues. Now, finally, I want to challenge all these animals who sometimes masquerade as men to raise their right hand, place it on their left chest, close their eyes, and pray with me now. Because this is about them. And I want them to say, Mudimu ra lawyer. Iseng ka meriana, but ka diketso tse mpe. Ra kopa o re thuse, re kgone go tlhompha batho, re treate basadi le bana sentle. Amen. And as we close this debate, we need to agree that this matter can't be relegated to the next individual. We need to play our part inside our homes, our streets, our communities, as this
Thank you very much.
24 hours a day, 365
Thank you,
days.
Honorable.
Thank you very much.
Ra leboga.
You don't know how many days are there in a year.
Regalo, are you there on the platform? We proceed to COPE and Tate Madisha.
Thank you very much. The debate before us today has become a yearly expression of sympathy for women. This continuous expression of sympathy leads to the expected evolution of resolutions, which are seldom implemented by those who are supposed to implement them, namely the politically elected individuals or persons who were legally employed by the state to do so. Indeed, this has become a historical song. Let me refer you back to the joint sitting convened by the President on the 17th of September 2019, in which the President Ramaphosa condemned this GBV. It was at that sitting that we all rose to both condemn and commit ourselves to stop this horrendous act. But nothing was done. And I remember it was last year that Honorable Mente proposed a debate of national public importance on this particular issue. But then again, nothing was implemented. I proposed, I remember, that the majority in this House should agree, and we all, of course, agreed, that we must create laws and enforce the existing ones to protect women from discrimination and violence, including rape, verbal abuse, mutilation, torture, trafficking. Has this been done? No, because throughout the world, South Africa is seen as #1, the country that rapes women more than any other country of the world. I propose that to help women, we must give them skills and the ability to learn and earn more money, encourage them to both participate and even lead political parties, sensitize the public, disadvantages of forced child marriages. I truly feel that we must be set, because albeit we consistently agreed that GBV kills our nation, albeit we consistently take resolutions to stop that satanic act, but those whose daily legal duty it is to actualize the stoppage of this satanic act never do so. For as long as the women's existence is left to play the second fiddle of the human existence, then their economic advancement will never be realized. I call on all of us to stop clapping hands and commit ourselves so that indeed we can be able to implement what we say we want to implement. Thank you, Chair.
Ra leboga. Honorable Hendricks.
There is no marital justice for women in religious marriages, but priests, rabbis, and imams must pray for President's success when they take the oath. So the practical step Al-Jamaa is doing during Women's Month is to table a private member's bill so Parliament can comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal to ensure marital justice for Muslim wives by November 2022. We hope honourable members will engage with this bill as Muslim wives also vote for their party. This is in August today. Another practical step was to table a motion to make amendments to the Maintenance Act using a green paper put together by women maintenance activists to capture the oppression of women by men with regard to maintenance issues. Honourable members must study this green paper and Al-Jamaa's first round thinking what amendments must be made. Management of queues at maintenance courts and settling maintenance cases within 3 months is something the Minister of Justice can ensure if he is really serious about Women's Month. Parliament must have a policy on maintenance just like it is only now putting together in place a policy on marriages. New President's first port of call is to visit the grave of Chief Albert Luthuli. Honourable members must visit the Chief Albert Luthuli Museum in Groundville, who embraced fatherhood. In this way, we can put an end to gender-based violence. Chief Albert Luthuli had a family meeting at dinner time whenever he could, where he discussed with his 7 children and his beloved wife the events of the day and what to look forward to the next day or week. His wife did not fail to edit his speeches. In and out of jail for the freedom we have today did not derail his family meetings. He set the example of fatherhood, and his 7 children became educated and served society. Even today, President Ramaphosa has family meetings. The importance of fatherhood has not been fully debated during Women's Month, as in its absence, an end to gender-based violence is a pipe dream. The chief's sons had to make breakfast for their sisters and wash dishes, did the laundry and iron their sisters' clothes. That's what Mala Tuli, daughter-in-law of the chief, was going to tell us in the Women's Parliament last week. We must not think that this is European ways. It is Honorable Chair, African fatherhood. Father must care for the woman in the family. Women must chill out and relax if they so want to. Fathers today must be put on terms and regulated. That's why we have a Maintenance Act. So we call on members of parliament to do something like Al-Jamaa is doing. We've got the private members bill. We're making amendments to the Major Maintenance Act. What are other parties doing? Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. Asibize manje umhlonishwa inkosazana kaChabalala.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Members of Parliament, viewers at home. Let me introduce myself. I'm Judith Chabalala, ndi ngwana stareke ufiridovona, mukororo wa Chivasa na Chiwobe, mupikwana ive lebivanenda Sara. Narazabatu. We meet here today as we close the Women's Month. Allow me to start by a person whose voice was ever present and inspiring to the freedom fighters in our townships and villages. The people's poet Ramzwake Mbuli says, "Ukulimala kwengondo, ukulimala komuntu, ukulimala komuntu, ukulimala komndeni, ukulimala komndeni, ukulimala komphakathi, ukulimala komphakathi, ukulimala kwesizwe." Ngivumele ngibuze elami iphombo keleshile, kungani uthule izingane zibhubha? Ngivumele ngikhulume noNembeza wakho. Yebo, ngivumele ngikhulume nawe. Makwalandini kunini nihlezi nisonge izandla yini neliyenzayo engapheli. Now, the people's poet would have asked questions during the height of the state of emergency in 1980s, when the group of apartheid was strangling the souls of the resistance of the youth, workers, women, Black people in general, and Africans in particular. The intersectional nature of the struggle for freedom was understood in the African National Congress. We understood that then can never be a true freedom unless the system of exploitation of working class by capitalists was abolished. We understood that even if the board of a company has a Black face, thanks to the Black economic empowerment, and our children went to former white schools, the system of racial oppression will remain. We also understood that there could never be true gender equality unless the system of patriarchal was rolled back and defeated. So when the 23,000, some as young as 10 years old, fall pregnant, we must admit that the people's poet tells us we are a damaged nation. That is because we have damaged communities, broken families, ruined individuals, and engendered brains. What are we doing all about this? I want to argue this afternoon that we should debate in the House every year doomsday about gender-based violence and femicide until we do what needs to be done. What needs to be done is also known to each and every one of us sitting here in this house and also at home. We have to decisively dismantle the pillars of apartheid, colonialism, class exploitation, and structural unemployment system, racism, patriarchal oppression, apartheid settlement patterns, colonial underdevelopment of townships and rural areas, amongst others. The crime statistics presented recently by the Minister of Police revealed that women are victims of abuse within overpopulated spaces, each of which wave of the COVID-19 pandemic has its own statistics that goes congruent with the increasing number of GBV. As the elected public representatives of our people, we need to come up with programs to address these issues and thus make it possible for women and girls, regardless of their socio-economic status, to feel that they are part of a society, that their safety is guaranteed by all the structures of a democratic state. As the NDP will employ all of us that we should feel safe, all South Africans should feel safe, women remain very vulnerable on this item. Now, the challenges that faces women during the pandemic that we all know is that they were largely borne the brunt of the pandemic and has been exacerbated by the largely existing challenges such as inequality, unemployment and poverty, the gender-based violence and the lack of economic empowerment. Over 42% of households in South Africa are women-led, and women work in the hardest hit economies such as hospitality, health, retail, trade, manufacturing, including mining. The job cuts and employment insecurity in the informal sector further exacerbated the conditions of employment that women are already subjected to, such as low wages, poor working conditions, and lack of